I am so happy to bring up Lorraine Longhi. She's told this story before in the Outside Times as part of the Arizona Republic's Arizona Storytellers Project. So I want to give our colleagues there at that newspaper a little shout out and say, like, first of all, thanks for helping to coach Lorraine. Also, Lorraine, thank you for serving our community with your beautiful journalism. We are excited to still read you. But Lorraine's story is about her family. And so I'm going to let her take it away.
Thank you so much, Megan. So I know for a lot of people, some of the best memories around food and family happen during the holidays. My story tonight is about a holiday that doesn't come for about a month after Christmas, but which in my family is just as important as Christmas, if not more so. I am a Taiwanese American, so my mother is originally from Taiwan and my dad is from New York. He was adopted and raised by a huge family of Italian Americans. So growing up, I always really identified with the idea of America being a blended society because my family perfectly matches the definition of what it is to be a melting pot. Now, growing up, I always felt like I had the best of both worlds, especially when it came to food. Every week, my dad would make his homemade marinara sauce with spaghetti and meatballs and Italian sausages. And on the flip side, my mom would make all of our favorite Chinese dishes, things like mapo tofu, which is a spicy chili pepper tofu dish, or tong you bing, which is a popular fried scallion pancake, sharan cao dan, a shrimp and scrambled egg dish. Now, I think I realized early on that the rest of the world didn't necessarily always see me as Asian. That part of my culture is not something I think that's readily apparent on my face. And it's not something that a lot of people assumed of me until it came time to eat. So a lot of times in lieu of the traditional American lunches, my mom would pack the aforementioned Chinese foods for me to take to school. Now, something you all should know about Chinese food is that a lot of times dishes are named for what they physically resemble on the plate. So while I was at the 6th grade lunch table, seeing my friends pull out their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, I would open my lunchbox to a ground pork and cellophane noodle dish, whose Chinese name literally translates to ants crawling over a tree. I got a lot of interesting reactions when I would open up my lunchbox. Some of my friends were really curious about what I was eating. Some of them thought it was funny. But some kids too, I think, were a little disturbed by the things that I would bring to school for lunch. And looking back, I think that's the first time I realized maybe not everybody understood my culture or were made a little bit uncomfortable by it. So while everyone was throwing their cookies and chips into the middle of the lunch table to share, I realized maybe I didn't always have to share, that my family's food and traditions could be kept a little closer to the chest. Now, Christmases in my family were just a blessing to me. Some years we would go back home to New York to my grandparents' house for a traditional snowy Christmas. And it was just an embarrassment of riches of Italian food, pastas, breads, cheesecakes, these homemade pizzelle cookies that my grandmother used to sprinkle powdered sugar on top of to mimic the snow falling outside. But other years, when we weren't traveling for Christmas and my parents didn't feel like cooking, we would turn to another beacon of light and comfort in our local neighborhood, the all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet. So nowadays, it feels like everyone understands the comfort and convenience of Chinese food, but when I was in junior high and high school, and I would come back from winter break and tell my friends and teachers that I hadn't gone to visit family for Christmas, that my parents hadn't cooked, that instead we had spent Christmas at the China Super Buffet, I would get a lot of these same strange looks. So again, while I was never embarrassed of my family's traditions, they were traditions that sometimes I was more comfortable keeping to myself, almost like a secret to just share with my small family. Now, the story I'm telling tonight takes place during Chinese New Year in 2011. For those of you who don't know a lot about Chinese New Year or don't celebrate it, it is a huge deal in Asian cultures, not just Chinese culture. Much like American holidays, it's a time when people get time off to be able to travel back home. and spend what's considered the most important meal of the year with their families. Now, Chinese New Year 2011 fell in February, and at the time I was a freshman at Arizona State University's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. My dad was working abroad, and my brother had moved out of state a couple years prior. So it was just my mom and I for this specific Chinese New Year. I was missing half of my family, but excited to celebrate Chinese New Year the way I always did with my mom, gathered around our dining room table, eating homemade hot pot. But this Chinese New Year was different. My mom had told me earlier that day that she had invited a coworker of hers to join us that year. My mom's coworker's name was Donna, and Donna's birthday just happened to fall on Chinese New Year that year. And my mom thought it'd be a great idea for Donna and her daughter to come over and celebrate with us. Then my mom told me, Donna's daughter actually goes to school with you. I had never heard the name my mom gave me, so I did what any 18-year-old budding journalist would do, which is to get on Facebook, stalk this girl, find out as much as I could about her. And on paper, I think Donna's daughter, who was named Selena, and I could not have been more different. I was a tall, awkward freshman in college with dark hair and glasses, still trying to figure out the transition from high school to college. Selena was a short, blonde-haired, blue-eyed senior. She had several internships under her belt at the time, and I had no internship experience. At the time, I think Selena was clocking in around 10,000 followers on Twitter, and I was topped out at about 70 followers on Twitter. And so, all of a sudden the realization started to dawn on me that this older, cooler senior girl was going to be coming into my house for Chinese New Year, and that potentially the walls that I had spent years putting up around my family and I's traditions and foods could come crashing down. So soon enough, Donna and Selena showed up for dinner, and Selena and I made the kind of awkward banter that you make when your mom introduces you to one of her friend's kids, only it was doubly compounded for me because Selena knew so much about my other life, my life at school. She asked me how my classes were going, if I was interested in any internships, the vision I had for my career. She was kind and amiable, but I couldn't shake this thought that I had in the back of my head of what was coming, that this older, cooler senior girl would soon be watching and judging me as my mom and I took fish balls and whole shrimp and threw them into a pot for her mom's birthday dinner. So the time came to eat. And something wonderful happened. Selena loved the food. Her mom loved the food. They didn't recoil or grimace at the squid or shellfish that my mom was pulling out and putting in front of them. They instead eagerly tried everything and were so enthusiastic about what a delicious meal it had been. The evening went on, and I realized that I was missing half of my family, but I was here having a great time with another mother and daughter that I had just met a couple hours previous. Soon, the conversation turned back to me and my career, and Selena told me that the magazine that she was an assistant editor for at the time was looking for interns this year. She asked if I'd be interested, and I was nervous, but excited at the opportunity to maybe get some real-world journalism experience. I followed up with Selena a couple weeks later, and a couple months after that, I was writing stories and reviews for Selena and her managing editor, Megan. Selena and Megan would go on to be the first two real female mentors I had in journalism. Selena in particular taught me a lot of really valuable lessons: to be confident in my writing, but also to not say I'm sorry for things that were not my fault. Today, Selena lives across the country, and I haven't seen her in a while, but we do now follow each other on Twitter. And I still consider her a valued friend and peer. Also, the experience I got working for Selena and Megan would be a big reason why I would get an internship at the Arizona Republic, the paper that I've been working at ever since I graduated college 6 years ago. So while there are too many countless cherished memories of good times with friends and family over the holidays. When I look back, what this Chinese New Year taught me more than anything was that whether it's food or my family's traditions, sometimes it pays to share. Thank you.